Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin, and welcome to episode number 78 of What's Happening in Travel. I'm alone this week. Kusher is not here. He is visiting family and taking care of family, so he can't be with us today. So I'm writing solo. So what I'm going to do today is I did an interview with a friend of mine back in May 3rd. It was May 3rd last year. And I want to bring that interview in today. His name is Ryan. He works for an airline, major airline in Hawaii. And Ryan wanted to come on and just talk about his experiences working. And this was like in the middle of the pandemic last year. So you'll hear him talk about that kind of stuff. And behind me today, my background is this was Antigua. I'd gone down, I think, in 2019, and just kind of took stood by the ocean by the Veranda Resort, which you can see right behind my head, and just took a video early morning. I was alone. I was just hanging out, enjoying the sunrise. So listen to Ryan, and when he's done, I'll come back with some thoughts. All right, everyone. So welcome to actually the very first episode of what I hope will be something that you guys like. I'm in the aviation industry, and most people just think about airlines, about just buying the ticket and going somewhere. They don't really think about like how the airline works and the people behind the counter, right? So as you know, I'm in the airline business. I know a lot of people in the airline, and my friend Ryan he's in Hawaii. And I asked him if he could come and tell you what it's like to be a pilot for a major US airline. And so he said yes. And I was way too excited. So the next day we're on like we're doing now. And what I want to do is just quickly tell you about Ryan, okay? So I'm just reading from my little notes here. Ryan started in marketing management Hawaiian in 2000. And then he went to marketing at Continental Airlines, which is where I met Ryan. I used to literally sit right across the desk from Ryan. And then he went and flew for Gulfstream Airlines. And Gulfstream is now Silver Airways, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then he flew for XJT, which is ExpressJet Airlines. Now, you guys don't think of these airlines. You just see it says United Express outside, or it says Delta Express or something like that, or Delta Connection. You don't think about the name of the airline, but there's actually another airline that's operating that flight. And by law, the airlines are required to tell you that. So that's why you'll see something that says operated by ExpressJet Airline or Endeavor Air or somebody like that. And so after he left that, he went to fly for Hawaiian. And so today I'm going to pick his brain and find out what's been going on. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here. I miss you.
Oh, ditto. We had way too many fun times. And so so here's the thing, Ryan. Tell me, have you always wanted to be a pilot?
You know, I've always been interested in aviation and really interested in travel.
Yeah.
And when I went to college, I actually went to college and studied IT and computer science. But my first job when I graduated college was I was a marketing manager for Hawaiian Airlines running
Yeah.
their flyer program. So that kind of got me interested in working at an airline. But it I ended up running into a Hawaiian Airlines captain who flew the DC-9 back
Wow.
in 2000, and he offered, this is before 9/11, he offered, because I was an employee, to give me a chance to ride in the cockpit, and we did 2 round trips to Kona, and I got to ride in the cockpit, and it just absolutely was interesting to me and really exciting, and that's when I kind of made my decision that, okay, I've got to figure out how to do this. So that's when I started training, is when I was actually at Hawaiian Airlines already working on their website and their e-ticket system, et cetera.
Yeah. So did you just, I guess you took flight training from a flight school? Is that how you got started in that?
Yeah, so I used a local flight school. I used a number of local flight schools, but the majority of my flying was at a place called George's Aviation in Honolulu, right there at Honolulu International Airport.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty cool because, I actually wanted to be a pilot, but as a young kid in Jamaica, it's really expensive. So I ended up shelving that idea and, went to work for an airline because um, as a kid, I was always curious as to where do people go and why they go where they go. So the closest thing to working for flying for an airline was actually to work for an airline. So I ended up doing that. So that's pretty cool. So how did the gig, what you're doing? Well, tell us what you're doing now. Like, what's your job now?
So now I'm a first officer on the Airbus A330 at Hawaiian Airlines.
Uh-huh.
The majority of the flying that I do is long haul. Every flight that I do is what we call ETOPS, which is
Okay.
extended twin engine operations, which means that we go over the ocean for greater than 180 minutes. So we do long haul over the ocean flying. So most of what I do is one leg out, and then I turn around and I do one leg back.
Oh,
So
wow.
I fly generally to the West Coast, a little bit of New York and Boston on the East Coast. I do a lot of Australia with Sydney and Brisbane, and I do Auckland, New Zealand, and Tokyo and Korea. Done a little China and the Philippines, but it's pretty much everything in and out of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Because at my company we just have one hub, one domicile.
So one of the things I like about Hawaiian to me is like the hidden American airline or airlines or U.S. airline, because most people, unless you live in Hawaii, you don't really think about Hawaiian Airlines. And you guys actually fly one of the longest domestic routes. I think you go from
It is the
Honolulu
longest
to
domestic
Newark,
route.
right?
Yeah, the Honolulu to Boston.
Oh, to Boston. Okay.
That's the new long. That's the new long one. Yeah,
How long is that one?
it's about 12 hours.
So 12 hours. That's like Houston, Tokyo?
Houston, Tokyo is about 14. That's just
Oh,
about there.
14.
Yeah, that's almost it.
I always tell people that I think Houston, Honolulu is like about 8.5 hours or so. And
Right.
Houston, London is very close to that.
That's true.
So yeah, that's pretty crazy. So what advice would you have for? Well, I should say that the airline industry is in turmoil now, so probably we should talk about that a little bit. Like, what are your
Sure.
days like now? With like because I know that there's still some flights, but a lot of them are cargo. So typically, like, I mean, what are you doing these days?
So we had a little bit of a break for a little while, while the airline was recovering from COVID. But actually, starting tomorrow, I'm going back to a full schedule. I'm going to be flying cargo flights from Honolulu to Seoul.
Oh wow.
Um, so I've got 4 round trips to Seoul this month, and Hawaiians, in my opinion, Hawaiians really trying to be smart, and they're picking up opportunities to fly cargo and looking for as many opportunities as they can just to stay alive. And I think that's really cool. So I'm excited to start going to Seoul this month.
Good. So, is it just underbelly cargo, or are you actually doing the cargo in the airplane thing
I
inside
don't,
the cabin?
I don't actually believe we have cargo on the upstairs portion of the airplane. I think it's all in the cargo area. But I know that we normally have a rest bunk that we keep down there, and I know they removed that just so they can haul additional cargo.
Oh wow. I
Yeah,
often I often tell people that aviation started with cargo, and everyone just thinks it's all about the people. And a lot of people, when I tell them that no airplanes is flying, it's like, well, we need that because we still need our mail, we still need food. I mean, these cases
true.
we need supplies, we need PPEs and things like that. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. One of the interesting trivia things that a lot of people don't know is Hawaiian Airlines has the oldest cargo certificate still in operation in the United States. It's 91 years old, and it's cargo certificate number 2.
Wow. So do you know who was number one?
I can't. I think it was the old Iberia. I can't remember exactly,
Yeah.
but Hawaiians started in 1929, and they have an old cargo certificate.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. I know that in the olden days they used to light those barrels of fire, and that's how they used to use to navigate across the country.
Right, right.
Oh, that's pretty
All
cool.
GPS now.
I know. Right? Oh, well, speaking of GPS, so like, kind of walk us through a flight to Incheon, say, right? I mean, how do you prepare for it? How does it work?
So the way we prepare for long haul flights like that is it all starts with a dispatcher. So we have a dispatcher that is out there looking at all the NOTAMs, with notices to airmen, all of the information about the airports, all the weather, all the alternate weather, everything about the route, turbulence, everything. And they're basically deciding our route based on all of those factors to try to give us the smoothest, most cost-efficient route we can possibly do. And when the pilots get there, we show up to the airport about an hour and a half early or so before departure, and we sit down and we pull our paperwork and we call our dispatcher, and the dispatcher will brief us on what they've come up with as far as our route goes, and talk to us about the weather and talk to us about things. They ask us if we have any concerns that we need to incorporate into that flight plan based on what we see, just in case they may have missed something. And we kind of work as a team. It's not really a one-way deal, but we kind of have to work together to, come up with exactly what we're doing. Usually we just follow what they've already pre-planned because it's pretty predictable. Then we take our paperwork and we walk out to the gate and we set up a flight, program the airplane with all the waypoints that they've already planned for us, and we start running our checklist and get the flight ready. It takes about an hour and a half to do that.
So what are waypoints? I mean, just for the people who don't know what that is.
So a waypoint is, another word for it is a fix. It's a position. Usually it's a GPS coordinate that has a name.
Okay.
Sometimes they're unnamed. Sometimes they're just latitude, longitude points. But basically it's like a breadcrumb trail that the airplane follows, and you plug it into the computer and it follows all of those little waypoints all the way along for your route. So, and you never stick with all the waypoints the entire route, because when you get close to where you're going, because of traffic, usually they'll start turning you off into different directions and bringing you around to do your approach and landing.
Gotcha.
For all the ocean crossings, they have very specific tracks that we usually follow for, especially the West Coast.
That's pretty cool. Now, since most of your, before I asked that one, currency, right? So, and currency is in the airline industry, it's keeping current. So I can you explain that. You're the expert.
Sure. Yeah. That's an easy one. We have to do 3 takeoffs and 3 landings every 90 days to stay current. And then once a year, we go to the simulator and we do a recurrent simulator training that takes about 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I saw something that Asiana had the A380s, and if you saw that, and they had some issues with it where because there's lack of simulators or simulator time, they may actually have to fly the airplanes to get the pilots current.
Yeah, airplanes will get you just as current as a simulator. So that's interesting. That seems like a high cost way to do it.
It is. But the article I was reading was in 1 Mile at a Time, and he was saying that he had said they sketched it, they looked at all the different ways. So they used to use Koreans, but then because Koreans, they have their own pilots and they're using them. And then they used to go to Bangkok and use the, I think it's Thai Airways, simulators, but they can't, because when you go to Bangkok, you have to be in quarantine for 14 days.
So, well, we're running into that problem too at Hawaiian, because we have an A330 simulator in Honolulu that we own. We have an A321 simulator in Honolulu that we own. But all of our inter-island pilots fly the Boeing 717. And the only 717 simulators that we know of in the world there's 2 of them in Atlanta that are run by Delta. And then there's one of them down in Brisbane that's run by Qantas, which is the one Hawaiian Airlines uses. And so for our guys to go down there, they'd end up in quarantine, and it's just not practical. So our company's coming up with other ways of doing things, and one of them is that if you're a 717 guy and you're not getting called in very often, you're supposed to call in, and they give you a trip so you can get a few landings in.
Oh, good. Oh, geez, that's pretty amazing.
This is part of staying alive in COVID, right?
I know, it is. And so have you guys parked in the planes? And if so, where they park?
Yeah, we have a whole row of airplanes parked in Honolulu.
Wow.
Hawaiian actually is one airline that really did something a little bit different. We really scaled back to minimal bare bones operations for a little while. So we're smaller. It's just how we have to operate.
Exactly. So what's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is the people I work with. You know, I work at a very small airline. I fly with the same pilots pretty much all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we all know each other, and we all know each other's kids and wives, and we just kind of spouses, and we just kind of, you know, have a nice little camaraderie. It's a little flying club. I really enjoy the people, but I also really enjoy the travel. For me, operating an airplane is really exciting, and it's technical, and it's interesting, and I actually just really enjoy going places. So for me, that's a big plus.
Cool, cool. So how is there the balance between the family and, you know, work? How does that work for you?
You know, for me, I have a wife and two small girls that are, you know, in grade school, and the reason I chose Hawaiian Airlines is because of the schedule, and the way it works at Hawaiian is because of our geographic location. Nothing is closer than 5.5 hours away, which is San Francisco. That's the closest point to Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
And pilots can't be in the cockpit for more than 8 hours, so you can't round trip that in a day. So everything we do is one leg out and one leg back generally. And so for us, it's great because we have a lot of 2 and 3 day trips, and that's pretty much what I do. Is I do about one long haul 3-day trip a week. So, like for example, most of the time my schedule is I'll leave at noon on a Monday and I come back noon on a Wednesday, and then I'm home with my family the rest of the time, which is a wonderful opportunity.
Very cool. No, I like to hear that. It always amazes me at how much, I guess, time away from home pilots fly, but or aircrew do. But I guess it's kind of like a family thing, and it's something you can take the family along. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I do that quite regularly. This is for the last 4 years. In every June when my kids get out of school, we have just a few 5-day layovers in Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah.
So I bid the 5 days back to back to back to back to back, and I'll leave the family down there for a month and just fly back and forth.
That's really cool. And
yeah.
Okay, so speaking of that, and people always ask me this, and I go, well, I don't really have one, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Which is your favorite city to layover?
My very favorite place to go is either Sydney or Brisbane, but I love Australia, and I love New Zealand too.
Yeah.
But I would say Sydney's probably #1 for me.
That's cool. I like Brisbane. Sydney's cool, but Brisbane, there's something about it. I don't know. I had to take is it the cats that just go way out on the up into the interior of the country?
Yeah.
Into the city. It's I really like those. So what do you do when you're not flying?
You know, I spend a lot of time with my kids. I go to the beach a lot. I love going. I live up in the mountains in Hawaii, and I'm building a home, and we're always spending time. I'm on the Hawaii Racing Association board, so we're always doing car shows and just enjoying hobbies and things.
So I know Ryan likes VW. So every time I see a VW when I travel, I always take a picture and send to him.
I always appreciate that.
They are pretty cool vehicles, right? Especially in Europe, you see some really old ones just like hanging out in the middle of nowhere. So I always like to take a picture of those.
Yep, they're fun to cruise.
I know, right? So if I know the industry is in turmoil, but you know, for what advice would you give someone who, you know, they want to be a pilot, they want to go work for an airline? I mean, what would you tell them?
My advice is go to college. You need to have a degree for the most part. There's people that have gotten hired as pilots without a degree, but most people need a degree. Most people that get hired have a degree. But I would tell them not to study aviation, but to go study something that will help feed them while they're trying to get their aviation stuff going, and then do aviation on the side. And that's kind of what I did. I ended up using my IT degree until I was really solid and with Hawaiian Airlines for a little while. And then I finally let the IT side, you know, kind of fade away, and I just focused on flying. But for a lot of years, you know, when you're at the level of just barely starting out with a commercial pilot or instructing or working at a regional, it's nice to have another skill like marketing or accounting or business or something else where you can run a little side gig and make some money to help feed you. So
that's good, because I think a lot of people think that pilots, initially make a lot of money, but they don't. I mean,
that's true. It took me from start to finish. It took me 11 years to get hired at Hawaiian and 12 years to where I felt like I was able to take care of myself on just my aviation income.
Yeah, our industry is kind of crazy when you think about it, right? But, well, Ryan, this has actually been really good. I think we're going to have a good insight into, what it takes to be a pilot, kind of what goes on behind the scenes. Oh, before I wrap up though, when you fly these long flights, I know there's some kind of rest and things like that. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So, like for example, I do Sydney most of the time, and my Sydney trips, we always have three pilots. We'll take a captain and usually two first officers, and one of the first officers acts as we call it an RO, or an international relief officer.
Uh-huh.
And so what happens is the first officer ends up sitting in the right seat, the captain sits in the left seat. One of the two does the flying, the opposite one does the radio work and the paperwork, but the RO sits in the jump seat in the middle. And what happens is when we take off, the RO goes and gets a probably 2.5 to 3 hour nap, and because it's about a 10-hour leg. And then after that time comes up, then one of the other pilots, depending on who's landing, will go back and take a break, and the RO will go sit in their seat for a little while and then swap the next guy out, and the RO will move to the other seat. And that way we all kind of rotate and everybody gets a break. And it works pretty good actually that way. I used to think that doing ultra long haul flying would be really hard on my body.
Yeah.
But if you manage your sleep well, you get used to it. Your body kind of figures it out. In fact, my family too, they're so used to 10 or 11 hour flights that we go to the West Coast and it's only 5 hours, and they feel like, oh my gosh, we're already here. What are we doing?
Oh, that's pretty cool. So, you talk about switching around. So do you just flip a coin who's going to land this time? Is that how it works?
Usually the captain will say to the first officer, and he'll say, hey, do you want to take us, do you want to bring us back? And we just kind of, one guy goes down, the other guy goes back. We just rotate around like that.
That's very cool. I've done about 2, maybe 3 cockpit landings.
Nice.
And yeah, they were pretty cool. One was actually on a 777-300 in Hong Kong, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on Cathay. It's a long time ago.
But
not Kai Tak, the new airport.
Okay.
It was amazing. It was just, the thing is that, you want to say something, you just have to be quiet. but it's very cool. And I got the 737. It was the only, because Lufthansa allows, I guess, non-revs to fly jump seat. Even if, as long as you're in management, you can fly a jump seat even though you're not flight crew.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was able to sit in a 737 landing in Dusseldorf, so that was kind of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I forgot what the other one was, but I know. I don't know if you remember an airline called Kiwi. They were based in Orlando. And a friend of mine used to work for me who was a dispatcher. And as it turns out, I used to teach him math in school. And he called up and he goes, do you want to go to New York? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you want to go cockpit? I'm like, yeah. And so he arranged it, and I was able to take that. And that was a 727. Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting. That's cool.
Yeah, so that was fun.
It's too bad we can't do that more often, because I think that would give people a little bit of a taste of what it feels like to be up there.
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, and most recently, I was on a delayed flight out of Europe. I was going into London, I think it was, on a British Airways flight. And because they're delayed, the guy came on, the first officer, and he said, hey, we have nothing to do. If you want to come up, you can see the cockpit. And I looked around and nobody moved. And I was like, excuse me. And so I went up and saw it. And so that was really good. He just wanted to talk. He had nothing to do. He had done all these pre-flight checks and stuff like that, and they were just waiting for traffic to clear. So that was,
That's cool.
yeah. All right, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you have any parting words for anyone.
No, I guess the thing I would say is if it's something you're interested in, you got to pursue it. One of the things you can do to start is you can go to a local flight school. A lot of times they offer an inexpensive discovery flight for about $100, and you can go up and fly with a flight instructor and see if it's something you're interested in.
All right, very cool. All right, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. And I guess you can just Google local flight schools is probably the thing to do, right?
Sure.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up soon.
All right.
Okay. And so, folks, this is our the end of our first episode. I was hanging out with Ryan, and that was really good. Stay tuned for more episodes, and make sure you subscribe and share with your friends. And if you got questions too, just leave questions below, and we'll try to get your answers. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Take care, Ryan.
Aloha.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope that listening to Ryan gave you an insight into what it takes to be a pilot in the aviation industry. Sorry, that's my phone ringing in the background. Of course, right? So thank you for watching. Remember, we are on Spotify. We are on what are we on? We're on all the podcast networks out there, but apparently it only counts if you're on Apple. Go figure. So if you're on Apple, download us, listen to us, leave a comment, leave feedback, so we know what's going on. There are 3 episodes that was never loaded: episode 9, episode 11, and I think episode 12, and those have been loaded. So go take a look at those. Again, thank you so much for listening today, and we'll talk soon. Oops.